Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting because sometimes people have these like the bad weather stuff goes and goes and goes.
Yeah, sometimes like like this is our we get a lot of rain during this season right before the spring like comes in. And I know in the East Texas area, sometimes you can have a whole week and it just rains the whole week, and so but then it gets nice and nice and pleasant and clear. Like yesterday it was cold. It was about 40 degrees. Are you there? Are you there, Rabbi? Rabbi? Yeah, we can't hear you.
Shalom, shalom. Akiao, can you hear me? I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I can hear. I see, Rabbi. We can't hear you at all. Oh, Tanel, can you hear us? Might be having some uh, mic issues.
can you hear me now or no?
Yes, we can hear you.
No. All right, because what part? Where did we leave off at? Because
It never started.
it never started the whole time.
Uh-huh. Yes, sir.
Gee, jeez. All right, all right, fine. Either way, okay. So, all right. So, okay. All right, all right. I don't know. Anyways, okay. So, all right. So, all right. So where we're at now is basically the whole idea that we're at now is just understanding this process of every mitzvah that we do, we're receiving light, right? And we talked about the 613 parts of the soul, the 613 parts of the body, the 613 parts of the physical world that's around us, and how the Torah, in essence, bridges that gap, right, between both. And or between all those things, it unifies in essence, right? Binding us with creation, all of creation together, in receiving God's light, creating one supernatural vessel that connects everything. Now the thing is that we talk about this idea of how the different parts of the body receive light from the soul, right? So there's these 613 parts of the soul, and they fuse the organs and the limbs, the whole thing, right? And so as we receive light from the Creator, that light goes into the different parts of our body and limbs. Now the thing is like this. So things like this. So the when we're doing a particular mitzvah, right? Because we want to understand how this manifests, right? This is Rabbi Chaim Vital. He teaches us in Shari Kedusha. No. No, hold on. In yeah, Shari Kedusha. Yeah. So, anyways, so in Shari Kedusha, he talks about this idea, right? So the idea is like this. So, how does this light that exists in the heavens come down into this world, into my soul, and then feed these different parts of my body? I mean, in that aspect, I understand it, but like, how does it work? Right? How does it work? How does my body get fueled with the light of the Torah, the light of Hashem? Like, how does this happen? So, the way Rabbi Chaim Vital explains his idea is that every single movement, every single part of the body that is used to fulfill a particular mitzvah, right? That part of the body, in the process of doing that action, becomes infused with light. So, like for example, if a person's standing up and they're praying, the Amida, right? If they're praying the Amida, if a person's praying the Amida, then they have to stand up, they have to hold the book in their hands, they have to pronounce, they have to listen, they have to look at the book with their eyes. They step back, they're using their feet, they're using their ankles, their legs, the whole thing. So in those particular prayers, right, a person is completely fused with light, right? Because every single part of the body is that. Like when you're eating food on Shabbos, right? All the things that you're doing, you're eating food, you're chewing it, your tongue, your palate, your senses, your stomach, your digestive system, all that is receiving the life force of the Creator. When you're cleaning up for Shabbat, when you're cleaning up after Shabbat, all these things, all the physical expressions that we do to fulfill the mitzvah, that part of the body is infused with light. So as we're going into this process of Pesach, right? Because Pesach is the ultimate destination, right? That's where we're going. We're going in that direction. In in that in that dynamic of the direction that we're going in is the Seder plate or the table, right? The mishbeach that we put inside of our house. We're not in the temple, so we have to create a mishbeach in the house. But the key thing is knowing that the greatness of Pesach is now, right? Everything that we do in preparation for Pesach, even when we thinking about Pesach, we're bringing light to our brain, to our makshava, to our thinking process. We're cleansing our thinking process through the light of Pesach. Now, the culmination of this light of Pesach is on the 14th, 15th of Nisan, right? But the light of Pesach is Nisan, right? It's I mean, obviously, when I say the light of Pesach, what does it mean? The light of Pesach, this light of reorder, restructuring, right? Reorganizing. That light is what we're connecting to every time we just think about Pesach. Every time we think about our Seder table, everybody, and we take it for granted because we're like, oh, what do you mean it's Pesach? We got to think about it. No, you're bringing light to yourself every time you think about it. You typing, you do research, anything you do, you're infusing yourself with light. And we take it for granted, but there's billions upon billions of people that are not thinking about it. They're not taking advantage of this opening that exists. Anyway, so with that being said, before we go further, any thoughts, any points you're going to bring up before we go? We're going to do a little bit of Rob Berg, because I'm just in that zone. It's bringing it back to my teachers, to the essence, to the beginnings, blessed memory, and then we're gonna continue on with the Haggadah. But any thoughts, any points, any reflections? Hold on. Okay. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're gonna listen to a little bit and just kind of like, okay, cool. Latinos in a wild environment. All right, fair enough. All right, so we just listened to a little bit of our Berg, and just the thing is, it's just like I said, it's just we're just on that process of just like going through it. We're going through it. We're preparing ourselves. This is an experience, right? It's like giving birth, right? I mean, as guys, we'll never know what it's like to give birth, but it's just saying in terms of like having something developing inside you that fully manifests itself, and you get to experience that manifestation for the rest of your life. This is a process of Pesach. Hold on. I can't believe we weren't on that whole time. You know what happened? Because someone called me. And so when they called me, it didn't. Okay.
That creates, as we said, linear time, the kav. What creates, or how do you break out from that, we said? Restriction, right? Restriction. What happens? You break out of the kav of linear time and space, and you move into the circular aspect where past, present, future, all is one. But how do you connect with all as one? When I'm all is one. When is that? Not when I have a desire to receive for oneself alone, but when my thought consciousness is a desire to receive for the sake of sharing. That's the way you break out. That's the way you break out of that point. The one point where you're in and not connected with anything else. And everybody follow the thing. So therefore, the Egyptian, until that point, was in total control of the world because he could focus in on the desire to receive for oneself alone. The Jew was involved in that, and therefore it says, if not for the beneficence of Hashem, therefore they were not deserving of Pesach, in fact. That's why you needed the Sfirah, the 7 weeks afterwards. That was a cleansing period. The Jew was at his ugliest point. So what does it mean the Jew was at its ugliest point? Who's the Jew? Who is a Jew? Show me where the greatest desire to receive exists, and then I can see this man has the epitome of a desire to receive. I don't care who his mother, father, anybody was. because only Eliyahu will know who's really Jewish and who's not. But how can you really tell? If there's a tremendous desire to receive, that's called a Jew. It's not his mother is Jewish, right? His mother is Jewish, therefore he's Jewish. Yeah, but why, if his mother is Jewish, is he Jewish? Why? Because mother means din, the aspect of blood, the will to receive. And if there is this linear, this line, then all it tells me is, oh, this is the guy with the greatest desire to receive. He's the one who can control the cosmos. See, the non-Jew cannot control the cosmos, not because he's lower. He's in the circle, one below the outer circle, right? So while we say, wow, look at the Jew, really up there, but he's also at the bottom. He could be the worst. That's called the Jew, the worst and the best. The non-Jew is the one in between. That's right. That's what Jew means.
If Egypt had a great desire to receive, what's the difference between the desire to receive of Egypt and of Israel?
At that point, they were both controlled by the same, except that you ask me, what is the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew? You know, which is, in essence, your question.
More specifically, what was the difference between the desire to receive of Egypt and the desire to receive of Israel? They both had a great desire to receive.
Right.
That's such a great desire that they took all the Jews to use the vessel even.
That's right.
That's how much they wanted to receive.
They needed them. They needed them. And that's why he didn't want to leave them out. Because if he knew he left them out, it would be the end of the Middle Kingdom. Why? Where does this Jew come from? He comes from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And actually you can ask, I think it's in the lecture. I mean, you know, okay, it says before that God wanted to give the Torah to the Jews. He went to all the other nations without going through the whole process. They all refused, and the Jews heard, what happens if I accept? You get double portions. Well, the minute he heard double portions, I mean, that was for him, right? Even the joke, why there are two tablets, not one, you know, to give him that double portion. Okay. But, you know, still in all, why, you know, why does it have to come? It's a little unfair, you know, what choice did they have? Because we came from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then it says we came through Shem, right? It says we came through the three sons, right? And then it says we came through Seth, the son of, what did this mean? Oh, so we have this good line, this good family line, right? No, that's not what it means. It means that family line contained the epitome of desire to receive, but with the potential static energy, thought, intelligence of restriction. That's all. That's all. The Egyptians were the epitome of a desire to receive, and no other nation would ever be like that again. That's how they could mummify things. They could build pyramids. In material reality, there was nobody that could excel the Egyptian. He had complete control of the material reality. Complete control. Because he knew how to tap the essence of desire to receive for oneself alone, which is the essence of the physical material reality. So the Jew, as long as he didn't exercise, you see, that central column, he had a tremendous affinity. That's why you understand that after they saw the Kriyat Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea, they saw the 10, they want to go back and eat the fish of the, I mean, nothing else in their mind except how good the fish was. But they weren't talking about that. They realized, boy, that physical material reality, was it so bad? Don't we say the same thing sometimes? What would hurt if I had a little extra $1 million? I mean, what would be so bad? Be so bad? Yeah. Because they always tasted that aspect of the desire to receive, the epitome, sometimes forgetting about restriction, you see. They put the blood on the three walls. Boy, what an act of restriction that was, right?
Having a
Right?
party.
Right? What an act of restriction. It wasn't. It wasn't. But because they did that little action, that was enough to have the angel of death pass over, you see. What do you mean pass over? In other words, they connected with Shet, Shem, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the three-column system. They connected, you see. Oh, they weren't there. Like us. Why are we going into Passover? Feel bonded. I mean, we may not be deserving of it, but what we really want to connect with is, hey, Lord, do you remember on that night, those disgusting Jews? And you told them they would just put up that little software that connect with everything. You remember that? Oh, sure, after that they had to go through the Sfirah. That was the spiritual growth period. Because they weren't deserving. That's why we only say half Hallel. Because the day after Pesach, back to the dark ages again. That's why they could think of fish. Because what did they do in the way of restriction in the establishment of the three column? Nothing. But you remember what they did? You asked them just to put the blood on the three doorposts, and you said that would be enough. As long as you begin to be conscious of such a thought intelligence in the universe, it wasn't easy, but you know, they did it. They did it. And what did you do, Lord? You then said, new cassette, that angel of death should kill everybody. I got into a new cassette. You see that angel of death? He was supposed to kill everyone. All the firstborn. Make no differentiation. But where was he? He was in that level of the cassette that was manifest at that time. But us, he passed over, you see. Why did he pass us over? Because you permitted us free. It was Lechem B'Zayon. It was free, a free universe. Only happened once, by the way. Only once. And so if you're smart enough, on Pesach night, with your software, you can get a free universe. Only that one night. The rest of the year, you're going to struggle like a workhorse. But that night, if you're smart enough, you can connect with the free universe. Just by doing a little software business. Hocus pocus. Like they did. Put the blood on the two doorposts and the upper part. And they connected. And it put them into another frame of reference. A new cassette. This is what the overview of Pesach is all about. Nothing more and nothing less than that. So everything. What? That's why we still have to do what we do at the Seder table. That's why we do it. But why are you doing it? Because by doing that, insignificant, it doesn't even require anything of me. Except, they did add, don't eat chametz. A couple of other restrictions they did place on me. On me, they did place a couple of restrictions. Because, what's that?
I think it's a big restriction.
That's right. Something more than what the Jew did there. You see, it wouldn't have been fair to tell the Israeli in Egypt, because his head was totally into the physical reality. It's incredible. And it said they reached the 49th gate of physical reality. The attachment to physical reality. 49th. Had they reached the 50th, where the Egyptians were, we would never have gotten out. Never. We're not talking about leaving Egypt. It was great there. They were having a grand time. Don't make no mistake about it. They were having a grand time. They didn't want to leave. In fact, I don't even know why they left. I think, what was so bad? I speak to a couple of Russians Jews in Israel. He said, don't make no mistake. Just throw away the aspect that you want to be Jewish, or things are very good. I know one guy, he had 2 homes. Summer home? Yeah. He says, Jews live there like you can't believe. Come to Israel. This is hell. I mean, so, we get confused. We get confused. Things are very good in Russia for the Jew who wants to acclimate and be just like the rest. No problem. Because how come all of these, Anatoly Sharansky and all of these physicists, I mean, how did they become physicists in the first place? Right? Mathematicians and everything else. I mean, things are so bad you can't go to college. Right? How did they get there in the first place? I'm telling you, he says most Jews have everything they want. Money galore, smuggling, everything you want. It's rampant there.
It's the best smugglers.
No, not they alone. Everybody. There is a very, there's. Sure. There's no question.
There's money to be made.
No question about it. This was what went on in Egypt. Let's not paint the picture, because then we are distorting our hard disk. It was great.
Why do they say they were slaves? I mean, not
It was
slaves.
suffering from slavery.
Slaves,
It
spiritual
was-
sense.
Right,
But they built the
spiritual
pyramid.
sense.
Why did they have to drag those big stones?
That also, it tells us, that was the cleansing part. Before they could get out, they had to go through that. Had to go through the mud. It's like the Ari says. You ask that question. Ask that question, the Ari, and he says it's like the diamond. You know how it comes out? Black. And through fire. They were then in a position, because of that suffering cleansing period, it permitted them, just with that little action of the blood, to produce this that they in effect didn't even want. In effect didn't even want. And I'm not sure in my own mind yet, I'm not sure in my own mind why they went along with him. I don't know. The only thing is, he could have promised them the rainbow at the end. The only thing. I mean, why did they want to go out? At the end, things were great. Things were absolutely great, to the extent that the Jew himself tells you, after the miracles, and after all the suffering they went through, they want to go back and eat the fish. Not the riches, because they had all the riches.
But Moshe was offering 100%.
Of what?
Of the whole. He was offering all the Chokhmah, he was offering everything.
The Jew, that's the answer, okay? That's the answer. It's not that simple yet, because look how fast they fell back to the physical reality, right? If I promise you $50 billion, then you can say, but listen, are you going to throw in the tape recorder? Doesn't sound too logical, right?
But it is. When you buy a house, it's like that. Yeah.
That's the nature of a Jew, by the way. He's going to spend, let's say, $2.5 million for the house. Well, listen, what happens with the wash machine? Does it stay with the house? A Jew will say that, by the way. I mean, look, how ridiculous does it get? But that's true. See, that's true. That's the Jew. That's called the Jew.
The big house is not the difference.
He could be at the bottom and at the top at the same time. Nobody, but you see, you need that kind of frame of reference. Not how do you take past and future at the same time. Don't you see, you got to take the circle. How does the circle appear? Bottom and top. The most bottomless pit. And the top, Ein Sof. It's all included in who? That's the Jew.
That's his beauty.
That's his beauty. And that's his ugliness. He could be both at the same time. The optical illusion of seeing both sides at the same time. That is called Jew. That is called Jew. That's why a Rabbi Akiva would have to go through what he did through Gerim to come. The Jew had to go through that cleansing. I mean, if you want to read the Ari, we could spend, for the next 24 years if we want to understand everything the Ari says on Pesach. But you'll see how he structures why they went through the pyramids of slavery and all that. But in brief, it was for a cleansing period. So what we want now on Pesach with the software that we'll discuss next time is how can we get attached to that free universe that occurred at that moment just by doing that. But it could only be the Jew, because potentially it was static, that aspect of restriction, but it was there. It was never flamed. Therefore it says if they reached the 50th gate, restriction could never again take place.
Just stop here for a second. So one of the yeah, okay, so one of the reasons I think is really important to listen to this conversation is because we have to reanalyze what we experienced in North America as African Americans, right? And it's not in the frame of taking away responsibility or not saying that there was cruelty and evil intentions, but I get that. We've discussed that, right? For hundreds of years, we've discussed that aspect of the story, right? So it's not taken away from that story, but it's saying that that story isn't the only thing that was going on, right? It wasn't the only thing that was going on. There were other things that were going on too, right? And to kind of get a framework to understand that, we can utilize the story of the slavery in Mitzrayim, right? Because the Rav Berg, blessed memory, he brings out some really interesting points here, right? So one of the points that he brings out is this idea of what was the slavery in Mitzrayim, because we think about it and we're like, well, they had these taskmasters over them, and they had to work these incredible long hours, and they had to, make these bricks and then the straws, and they carry them, and it was just a very, very difficult thing, right? So we look at that and we're like, obviously, us being Americans, we automatically think about the plantation, all these different things, right? But he's saying that the Torah, the Arizal is saying that something else happened, right? He's saying that actually they were not in slavery. Actually, they were in slavery, but they were not they weren't depressed. They weren't upset about it. It was just something that they dealt with. And you think, well, how do you reconcile that? Like, what could be like such a thing? And you think about, wait, like I remember, last Thanksgiving, right? My family's in America, and I just remember, they met up, they had a meal, type of thing. We always had Thanksgiving meals growing up, and I thought to myself, I said, hey, you know what? Everybody's off work because the federal government says you have a day off, right? And you have to go, and you think about the taskmasters, right? Okay, we have the IRS, right? You better make that money, you better pay your taxes, right? And then we have these jobs where people, I know, I don't know, I pray he doesn't listen to my classes, I'm sure, but I have a cousin who's a lawyer, right? He's like, he's supposed to be a big shot lawyer type guy. He went to, like, I think Yale Law School or something like this, whatever. Anyways, the point is just saying, I just remember he was working for some big law firm, and we had like holidays years ago. And I think he was saying like he works like 80 hours, 90 hours. It was like some crazy number, maybe even 100, I don't know. But I was thinking he makes all his money, but like if you're working like almost 100 hours a week, like how much do you get a chance to enjoy that? And his brother is actually a doctor and went to Harvard. I know he went to Harvard Medical School. And he's in the same process. And you do that for like, 20, 30 years of your life. And you never question it. And you're like, wait, you got to stop. There's more to life. There's other things going on. I could imagine going to them and convincing them that, to change their lifestyle. And so he was saying So what Rob Berg was saying in essence is that the Arizal teaches that with the slavery that they were going through was a slavery to a lifestyle that they actually enjoyed. And it actually, everything was taken care of and all they had to do was work. Right? And that's almost exactly like where we're at now. Right? And so he's building off of that process, right? So that's one point. Another point you hear him talk about a lot is this idea of restriction. Now, this is one of the big ideas that not everybody talks about. Actually, it's interesting enough. Chief Rabbi Pinchas is probably the only rabbi that I really met here in Israel that focuses on this idea of restriction. He refers to it as tikkunim, right? Which is corrections, right? So like he believes in like fasting and these things and different points. Now, the Rav Berg, the blessed memory, would refer to those things as restrictions. Same thing, but they just have different terms for them, right? And so this idea of restriction is in order for the light to come in, I got to create a space, right? I have to create a space for the light force of the creator. And so, like, for example, the other day I was, learning with Otunel and he did a blessing, a shakol, like shakol ni'ebi bro. But the thing is, I don't even know what he was eating. Maybe he was eating, maybe he was drinking something, I can't remember. But the point is saying that whatever he was engaging with has a 99% component to it. The 1% is what he was physically connecting with. Say he had an orange or an apple, right? So whatever that orange and that apple was, that's the 1%. Or even say he had a coffee, right? It's a 1%, right? But the point is saying that there's a whole frame of energy around that. It has life. It exists. If it exists, it's because it has the light force of Hashem inside of it. Now there's different levels of that, right? But the point is, if it physically appears, it's an expression of the light force of the Creator, right? Those molecules and atoms that come together is the life force of the creator, right? And so this idea is to say that when a person has this desire to receive, right? A person's hungry, I'm starving, I want to eat. Or even if they're not starving, they just see something that's going to give them pleasure. Oh, I want that. Oh, God, I love the way that tastes. They have this desire to receive, right? They have a desire to receive. The restriction is saying that God says there's a process of how this desires manifest. In this case, we're talking about eating an apple or drinking coffee. So the process that God says in order to do that is the blessing, is the bracha. And by saying this bracha and having intentions and thinking about creation and thinking about how all things are blessed from Hashem and all these things, I've restricted that desire. That desire does not control me. It is a part of me, but it does not control me. But rather, what controls me is my intellect, right? And so this aspect of intellect is what we're working off of right now, right? And that I have the power as a human being to overpower whatever my desire is through intellect. The animal does not have that ability, right? And so when we make these restrictions, then we're able to receive the light. So a lot of the things that the Torah asks us, which we call halakha, are different forms of restrictions. Or you could call them different forms of tikkunim, as Chief Rabbi Pinchas would say, right? But the point is, this separation, this restriction is what brings the light in, right? Like everything that we want that's holy, a word like the people in Chabad use this word. They use the word bittul, right? To null and void, to mavato, to null and void yourself. What does it mean? It's the same idea, but it's more clear from the aspect of how Chief Rabbi Pinchas says it and how Rob Berg says it, which is this dynamic of, being able to have a desire, but doing it the way that God wants you to do it. and the doing it the way that God wants you to do it is the connection, but what creates the vessel is the stopping of the desire, right? And so what he's saying is that this whole concept of the Jews when they were in, or the Israelites, right, when they're in Egypt and they put the blood on the doorstep, that was a frame of acknowledgement. There was a frame of acknowledgement that God had. I mean, think about what level they were at. That was his whole point. The level that they were at coming out of that really dark level of slavery, right? I mean, just totally in to the physical world, totally into just serving my desires and this. And he's saying that's how the Egyptians represent that energy. Not the energy of the desire to receive for the sake of sharing, but the desire to receive for the self alone, selfishness, negativity. That was the energy that ruled the world at that time, right? And they're saying the Jews, the Israelites at that time, were participants in that, right? They were participants in that energy of desire to receive for oneself alone. And it was only through the breaking of that, of saying that, no, I don't want to desire to receive for myself alone. I want to desire to receive for the sake of sharing, because this is the purpose of creation, because there is a creator. And that creator runs this world and it controls the world. And every aspect of creation is an expression of this creator. Because of that, because of that, because of that, you know, I'm able to connect to these supernatural levels, right? I'm able to break that desire to receive, because, the guy, he says, hey, I just want to make money, man. I don't care where it comes from, how it comes, what goes on. I just want the money. You hear people talk like this. What is he saying? He's saying that I am in the place of Egypt, and I'm in the place of desire to receive for self alone. People who don't challenge themselves, people who don't work on themselves. They say, no, I know what reality is. I know what my destiny is. I know what my potential is. And this is how I'm going to manifest it. I know. I don't need anyone else to tell me who I am and what I'm going to achieve. Nobody can tell me that. And so what the Rob was bringing down was that this idea of saying that that's the energy that dominated the world. So we're seeing by ourselves this aspects of ourselves that aren't fully connected to the creator, right? That aspect of, being really not connected to the creator is this aspect of how do we do that? If we want to bring light to our spiritual limbs, right? If we want to bring light to our spiritual limbs, we have to restrict. So that's what he's saying. And so this idea of restriction, he refers to it as a 3-column system: Hesed, Gevurah, and Tiferet. So you have Hesed, which is sharing, endless sharing. And then you have Gevurah, which is limitation. So the relationship between extreme sharing, or just sharing in general, I don't know why I had to say extreme, but sharing in the energy of restriction or limitation. Limitation creates a restriction. That restriction can only exist if there is something to restrict, which is the light, right? And through that restriction, there's an aspect of called Tiferet, which is the combination of Hesed and Gevurah together. It creates this harmonious light. And so the light force of the creator, it comes through this process. And so that's that. So when we talk again about this aspect of slavery, my thing is like this. People will say, when we analyze Black history, if you take it to a spiritual level, you're absolving cruelty. You're absolving, ruthlessness, barbarianism, right? And you're becoming an apologist, right? So what I'm saying is like this. If we're holding that these African Americans are descendants of these tribes in the west of Africa, and they came over here as slaves, The high majority of them, right? I'm talking about the ones that came to North America. There's slaves that went to a lot of places, right? But I'm saying specifically in the shores of North America. And for hundreds of years in America, they've been saying, hey, we're Jews, we're Jews, we're Jews. No one's listening, right? And so they hold him by Tinok Shinishba. Okay, fine. So from that perspective, then if from that perspective, then it's like, well, God would have to give us other signs to remind us of who we were, right? Because we were brought to a place where we're we were brought to a place, right? We were brought to a place, and and you're completely separated from your homeland. You have no resources, you have no knowledge, no scriptures, no nothing, right? Just memory, maybe. People are scattered. People went through this traumatic experience on ships, right? And so, wouldn't so how do these people figure it out, right? How would God talk to those people? How would God talk to those people, right? He would have to talk to them in a way that wasn't textual, right? Because they weren't allowed to read. But rather, he would have to talk to them through their experiences. And those experiences relative to the narrative stories that they had in their head. So when we talk about the difficulties of slavery, when we talk about the difficult and the pain that we went through on the plantation, that dynamic has to be analyzed also from a Torah perspective. And if we could say that, if the Rav can say that the bricks that were given to the Israelites to make was part of a cleansing process, a cleansing process, right? It was part of a cleansing process for them to ultimately be able to to have enough of an opening to acknowledge the plagues that eventually led to their exodus, right? So that little part, right? That little part of harsh difficulty was actually a cleansing, right? You only can appreciate a good relationship if you've been through a bad one. Sometimes. Some people don't need that because they fixed it in the past life, but sometimes they do, right? You only can appreciate a good business partnership maybe sometimes when you have a bad one. You can only appreciate victory, go through disappointment, right? So that concept of toho vuhu, before the light, is how the world was created, right? There was darkness. There's tohu vechoshek. It was darkness, chaos, the whole thing. Chaos, confusion. And then there was ve'ahi or. And there was light before the Torah was able to be revealed, right? Before they were able to build the Mishkan, right? They had to go through this idea of breaking the tablets. Complete chaos. People running around building an eagle, a calf, this whole thing, right? And so that process of going through immense confusion and immense darkness, before getting to light is a process, right? All right, so let's go a little bit inside and yeah, going forward. Anybody have anything you want to say or anything?
Chief Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. The I heard you say that the Kesed, Gavor, and Tiferet, and the Kesed was the sharing, and the Gavor is like limitations and restrictions, and that the Tiferet is kind of a combination of both. What would be a word to kind of that would kind of help to like sum it up as far as the Tiferet part,
You could say
if there is
like,
one?
yeah, I mean, you could maybe say like, I mean, the language is central column, right? So you have left column, you have you have right column, left column, central column, right? So right column would be Hesed, left column would be Gevurah, and central column would be that. But the way that I would explain it is say like a sandwich, right? So you have a beef burger, right? And so you have a burger, and so you have two pieces of bread, and you have the meat in the middle of it, right? And so it's like because you have those two pieces of bread, you're able to have a sandwich, right? So that sandwich, I don't, maybe it's not the best example. I don't know. But anyway, the point is just saying that anything, if you were going to explain it to a person on the street, anything that comes from, it's like the relationship from the father and the mother, right? So the father represents the force of sharing, and the mother represents the source of limitation, right? Meaning that she takes from the father his energy and she puts it into a limited frame, right? So like a male has many, many ways to express himself, and a woman, has an egg, right? So that limitation that she possesses allows that light that he brings to manifest, and that Tiferet would be a child, right? Union. So just saying it's the way that the world was created, or you could say that, the heavens and the earth, right? So you have the heavens being the light, and then the earth being the limitation, right? And then through that combination, you have reality, right? You got Adam, you got Chava, right? You have the heavens, you have the earth. All these things, all these connections are that. But in this frame, specifically, what we're talking about is in the frame of behavior and modality and expression, right? Which is this idea of being able to understand that there's this process of revelation, right? And the process of revelation is this idea of being able to restrict one's desires, meaning that I have a desire, but that desire is an energy, it's an intensity. It's like I don't know if you guys have ever had fish in the house, but you have the fish and they're swimming in the bowl, and then when they're hungry they come to the top, and they're just, their mouths are open, or this, or just like they want to eat, but they have this desire to be fed, right? And the same thing by kids, when they're babies, they scream, they want to be, they want to be nourished, they want to eat. That ferocious desire is what brings also energy into this world from the heavens, right? It's the fact that we desire Pesach, we can connect to it. If we had no desire for it, we wouldn't have a vessel. So the Rav is saying that a person who's a Jew, right? This is how he's saying it through the Arizal. A person who's a Jew is a person who has the highest desire to receive. And this goes into the frame that we're talking about the four different levels, right? The four different levels, meaning that you have the rock kingdom, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and human kingdom, right? And so the Aries, the Rav Ashlag brings that the person who operates on the rock level is a person who just wants a mundane life. They wake up, they eat, they sleep, maybe work, and then that's it. They do it over and over again. They don't really have a desire for so much past that. And that's a person at the rock level. Then you have a person at the vegetation level, right? Which is a person who desires luxury, right? They want to, they're number one in sales, at their company, right? They make the most in commissions, type of a thing, right? And so they have a life, and they have nicer clothes, or more expensive clothes. I don't know if they're nicer, but they're more expensive. And they have but that's their thing. They're into that, right? And then you have a person at the level of the animal level, right, which is above the vegetation level. And this person wants power. This person's a leader. This person's a president. This person's a CEO, religious leader, this type of thing. They want that level. And then there's a level above that, which is the human level, person who just wants to connect to the light force of the creator. He's like, I just go straight to the source. Now we know in each of those different levels, within each of those different levels, there's also four levels, right? So the level of rock, there's a level of rock, there's a level of rock of vegetation, there's a level of rock of animal, and then there's a level of rock of human. So at the rock level, there's four levels, right? And the same thing at the vegetation level, and the same thing at the human level, and the same thing at the same thing at the animal level, and the same thing at the human level, right? So what we're saying is, the Rav is saying that the Jew is the person who has the highest desire to receive. This is the human of the human, right? He has the ultimate desire to receive, right? And he says, so because of that, So because of that, you have both sides. A Jew can be a prophet, or a Jew can bring total destruction to the world, right? The people like the anti-Semites, they have a whole list of things that the Jews did wrong throughout history. Nobody else, just us, right? But it's true. There's been Jews that came in. There's been Jews that came and have done, things that weren't, so great in the world, right? And then there's Jews that were prophets, right? Israelites, right? And we can see that even in our own communities, right? We have, we can see in our, even in our, our own community per se, right? We have, Michelle Obama, and then we have, Sexy Red. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, like, so you guys probably don't know, it's like some singer, whatever, rapper, whatever. Or we got Gorilla, right? But the point is just saying that is that this is the dynamic, and so that person who has this high desire to receive, they have the ability to bring the most light into this world and the most darkness, right? And so what he's saying is, in terms of this aspect of restriction, is being able to have a certain modality and then pausing from that. So when the Jews put the blood on their doorpost, right? That was an acknowledgement of God. That was an acknowledgement that there was commandments. That was acknowledgement that whatever they wanted to do instinctually, they could not do, right? They were told not to leave their house,
Yes,
right?
yes, Chief Rabbi. I was kind of thinking about the matzah as well, like
Mm-hmm.
the limitation or the restriction of us. We have like the ingredients, right? The flour and the water, and if we go past the 18 minutes and so forth, then we're going into the leavening. But because as Jews, we have this restriction there. So we're going to do what the mitzvot has commanded us to do so that we can bring that light. Would that be a good way to kind of look at it as well as you're talking about the
Amazing.
blood?
Amazing,
Okay.
amazing. Yeah, that's 100% that, and it's the same light that exists when we make challah on Shabbat, but it's just the opposite, right? One
Yes,
is
got it.
yeah,
Got it.
it's the same type of thing. So that's the main idea that the rabbi's trying to get us to, is just that idea of understanding what this is, right? And understanding, the Rob, he got so radical. He said, I don't care who his mama is. he's like, if he has that big desire to receive, that's a Jew. And so that's the environment that, like, I came in on, right? If I would have maybe came in another environment and heard other things, I'm like, bro, I don't need this, bro. I'm good. But when it came into the reality of me as a human being, and having more of a desire for things than all the kids that I grew up with, and wanting to do more than that, and not understanding why I had this desire, like why I wanted to start companies, like as a teenager, why I wanted to be built, even when I played sports. So it was just like, why did I have these desires? And it had a lot to do with that I'm a Jew, right? And I was born a Jew, right? And I can even ask the question of my parents: why do they have so much desire to do the things that they did, right? They may not have made it into Torah the way that I did, right? But through me, they do, right? That's number one. And they're rewarded for every mitzvah that I do, right? As their son. And so the thing is just saying, though, at the same time, but they went way past the people they grew up with, right? So this has been a consistent theme, in my family. And so when I look at that desire to receive in that way, how do you subdue it? Because business can only do so much, money can only do so much. And I see I couldn't just spend my life and lie to myself about, oh, well, maybe if I just made some more money. I grew up around a lot of money, and none of the people there were fulfilled. A lot of kids I knew, like I talked about, a lot of kids I grew up with went to rehab, high school. I knew a lot of girls in high school that were getting like nose jobs and all types of stuff, high school. So it's just saying that, like, I knew at a young age that wasn't it. And then when I went to the Kabbalah Center, in my early 20s, it was like I saw like Madonna there. I saw Guy Ritchie with her. I saw Donna Karen. I saw Demean Moore, Ashton Kutcher. I used to pray with Ashton Kutcher like every morning for years. Right? He's an actor on TV. But the point is the same. But there's many other people there. And you see these people and you be like, wait, but you guys made it, right? You guys made it. You guys went big. You're worth 300 million, 400 million, 800 million. Like, what's going on? Like, what are you guys hearing? Why are you guys here? Because that's not it. And so from the way that I grew up, from my own personal successes, and then coming to the Kabbalah Center and seeing like people who are way more successful than me materialistically, and saying like, bro, it got to be more than this out here, baby, And then now you meet this guy, the Rob. He's like, yeah, there is actually, and I have information for you, and it's this whole technology, and you can feel your soul, and that blah blah, and so now we're here, right? Now we're here, right? 2025. Now we're here. So anyway, so I do wanna do more, but I do wanna actually stop here. I know I do want to go into Haggadah, but if you guys are open to it tomorrow, we can have an earlier class tomorrow. Maybe like all of us collectively, like around like maybe 14 o'clock. I don't know if that's too early for you guys. I mean, Tanel, he's ready. So, but I know you guys have the kids and the whole thing. So if you guys could do 14 o'clock or something like that, we could just really just go straight really into Haggadah and just really like finish it out. But I don't want to make the classes too long. You know what I mean?
Oh no, that would be a great time for us. So if you can just send the link, we'll tune in. We'll
Okay, so
continue.
okay, so yeah, so we'll do that tomorrow. Any final thoughts? Any thought? I mean, because we were talking it out and we're listening to the Rob because it's just such a special time, and it's like, and it's not something that like from my end or even from the Chief Rabbanut's end, with the leadership of Chief Rabbi Pinchas, it's like this isn't religion. You know what I'm saying? This is like who we are. This is your life. This is your personality. This is your soul. This isn't like something you have to do. Like no one has to tell me to drink water. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I do. Like no one has to tell me what songs to listen to. I know what I have affinity to. So it's just saying that like this whole thing is like a life. It's like this is how I survive. I have a big desire to receive. And thank God I'm focused here and not in other areas, right? Because okay, fine. You go out, you do a company, Kanye West, wow, $2 billion, $10 billion, wow. But imagine if you put that same desire to receive in Kedusha, in holiness, in bringing true holiness to the world through restricting his ego, right? Through restricting his desire to receive, right? By being able to reorganize up. And he didn't have those tools. And he doesn't have those tools. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, all these guys have huge desire to receive. And they're not negative people. I mean, they maybe do things and have personality traits that people don't like, but I'm saying overall, they're not negative people. They're not evil people, right? So the point is just saying that, the point is just saying that, the point is just saying that, just really focusing on just like that aspect because it's so important. Because as the Rob says, he says you could literally, if your mind's focused in the right way, you could literally create a whole entire universe for your life. You wake up and those days after those processes of those 7 weeks afterwards, you just start seeing new opportunities open up, new ways of thinking, new prosperity avenues, new healing opportunities. Everything will open up. So that's why for me, it's more important than that than just to be like, oh well, this is what the halak is, and don't do this. And okay, we'll figure that out. We're getting there. We're getting there. But what's going to protect you is your thinking process. All right. Anyways, any thoughts on this?
Well, just very quickly, I really appreciate the concept that Rob Berg brought out about how Egypt really represented that desire to receive, right? But that they didn't have the desire to share it all. But it's interesting because when it seems like it's very comparison to life today and what we saw in slavery in this country, but also life today, because it's like slavery has never really ended. It just with with the children of Israel, one of the things that happens is that when we become too comfortable and when we begin to participate in those same behaviors, it's as if we are given over to a nation and to a people, to an inclination, or to a system that only wants to receive, and knowing that that our whole purpose is to receive from Hashem and to share into this world. It's like you have an entity that that is literally using, knows that you're there to be those that's going to share, those that were designed to share with the world, to share with the nations. And what they do is it's like they capture you, okay, because of our own behavior, and then they literally cause you to share, while restricting your ability to receive from Hashem. And so what happens is ultimately is that you get to a place, whereas you, all, you know there's a question about how much more you actually can share, because if you don't receive, you have very little to share, right? So as slaves here in this country here, it's almost like, man, like, man, we don't have anything else to give. We don't have anything else to give because we can't be replenished. And it's as if these systems that we're living in are just always consuming, when Hashem is only in the state of sharing. And so once we, during this time of Pesach, it's as if you have a people that have been just drained, just totally drained. And then they come to the table with their God, and their God says, I'm going to pour out my spirit upon you. I'm going to pour out all this light upon you. And what you're going to see, you're going to see what the appropriate way, the appropriate balance of restriction, the appropriate, like I was reading this book, I can't remember the name of it, but I was reading this book and it was talking about Chesed and Geverut, and what it was dealing with was the fact that it represented like Isaac and uh, and Abraham, and it was like, Hashem is like right there. He has that balance, whereas um, if he loved us only, if he gave us just an unbound love for us, then the world would go in rebellion. But if he was just only in Geveret, then the world wouldn't exist, because he would just completely destroy it. And so he has this balance there where he's showing us this appropriate way of receiving and sharing, but receiving from him, and that only he can actually give in this manner. But then he tells us that he wants us to be like him. And so when we come out, I say, but that's why it's we have to get over that hump when we begin to look at the oppressor, and we have this mindset of hatred, because ultimately what happens is that the longer that we stay under their care, and they're steady drawing from us and taking from us and taking from us, and they're restricting the light of God in our lives, the only light that we can receive is from them. So we become more like them. And so we begin to be poisoned by their way of thinking. And so thus, as we come out of Egypt, that's that other portion about dealing with how we have to go through a wilderness experience in order to shed that dark light, that light that didn't come from Hashem. And so that was my thoughts, my reflection. That was powerful.
I think OTL is in a loud place, he said. Any other thoughts? Okay. All right. So yeah, on that point, it's just saying that the point is reanalyzation, right? Reanalyzing the world, reanalyzing our lives through a Torah lens, through the lens of our sages, through the wisdom of our sages. And to see that because it's like, the only thing I've ever learned about my culture was from a non-spiritual man's perspective, whether it's a book that was written by Alex Haley, he doesn't represent my belief system, or movies that have been written and all these different things that were written by people who I probably wouldn't want to hang out with, And these have been the sources of how I had to understand my history, and it creates this dynamic of shame and embarrassment, right? And covering up and all these things. But when I apply the Torah lenses to it, it's like, wait, this is sad. I mean, it's definitely sad, and it's horrible that people went through such a thing. But it's also a testament of my greatness and my connection to God, and my connection to God's ultimate plan for humanity, right? So anyway, so this is in here, and just the key thing is reanalyzation, reanalyzing our personal lives, reanalyzing the communities that we were raised in, reanalyzing the historical narrative, and being able to see that if I want to understand something, I'm not going to use the history books. I'm not going to use, YouTube or TikTok, which I know doesn't apply to you guys, but I'm saying I'm going to use the wisdom of the sages. And so, me as an African American, I want to understand. Slavery. Why did that? Why? What was that experience? What was I supposed to gain from it? I want to understand. I want to also understand. Um, I also want to understand, civil rights. I also want to understand why I was born into a reality that I was an ethnicity that was, that's dealt with in a specific way. What are the messages? What's the Torah connected to this? What am I supposed to learn? It's